I like that you say I don't offend people, but you're wrong. I have offended my mother. My mom is like, how could you have said that? And I'm like, again, it's a character, Mom. I'm very politically different from Joe.
Just take all the time in the world to, noodle.
We're gonna deliver on time, and he's gonna rue the day that he gave us the exact working conditions we've been asking for the last 15 to 20 years.
I'm curious about the energy inside of the writer's room, because you are a creator, you are a writer, and now we're in season 4. It's been a lot of writing, a lot of jokes, a lot of issues, a lot of evolving. How is that energy at the writer's room when you have to create a new season? And well, for all these that had come for the past 3 seasons?
Well, I feel incredibly fortunate to be in a writer's room these days, and I've been in writer's rooms for the past 15 years in LA, but it feels more and more special now because of how many things interrupted our writer's room over the years with this show in particular. We've had to do like some Zoom rooms. We've been separated for a long time when we thought we would be in a room. So I feel incredibly fortunate to be there in a room and be able to it's not just the sharing of jokes and stories, it's all the stuff in between that I feel like filters into the show that you just don't get over a Zoom or when you're all separated. So we love our little things that come up at lunch that we can, office dynamic type stuff that we can feed into the show. So it was really special to get all that back again. It's just been such a joy. And we have so many actors that are on screen and also in the writer's room. So that's always a joy to see you guys before the show even gets started shooting.
Yeah, I was just smiling when you were asking that question because I love being in the Mythic Quest writers' room so much, and I immediately thought of this moment from this season where me and another writer, John Howell Harris, were making fun of David for some reason. I can't remember.
Was he using Pages instead of using Microsoft Word?
And we were making fun of him, and I started laughing so hard he took my chair and wheeled me out of the room and put me in my office and closed the door. And it's just it's such a fun room, and it's such a testament to Megan and David because they create that culture and they create that experience. And so I think also now being in the 4th season, there's a lot of trust between, we've done this a few times, you know what I mean? And we all speak the same language in terms of these characters and stuff, so.
Yeah, Ashly directed an episode this season, and I remember her coming in one day and being like, now that I've put my directing cap on and I'm looking at this episode that I wrote, can we change this part of it? Because actually I can do a shot here that'll match up with this shot at the end. And it wasn't even an idea, but the fact that you could come in and be like, hey, can I, and we were like, you can change it if you'll go write it. Go write it, and then, because we don't have the time, but go ahead. And then she wrote it, it was brilliant. That bit of the episode just brought it to that next level. So as a showrunner, it's nice to know that other people are looking out for the show like that, and that's what I feel like we've created is a family that's all equally invested in the show being as good as it can be.
Yeah.
That was my next question for actually, because you are a writer, you are also an actress, and now you're directing one of the episodes, and you just answered it. Because for me, how was that mindset? Because you have to have a mindset. You have to be writing, you have to be directing, you have to be acting.
It does change. The mindset does change, but it's interesting because I find that it's really nice being in the writer's room and then directing an episode because I can see I'm not just focusing on my one episode. I know, okay, this piece leads to that piece, or this piece is speaking to an episode previously, and so I can keep that in mind of how it fits into the larger season. And, obviously it takes different parts of your brain, but I really like knowing that because then I feel like I can support the episodes that came before and the episodes that came after with whatever choices I make. The acting part is funny. Again, a David story. One of the few, all the scenes that I had in the first episode I directed this season were with David, and I feel like Megan actually directed those scenes because David and I did not know our lines. We were fully losing it. I don't know what happened. I blacked out.
You guys are such a good pair.
I love working. I love it.
That combination, I'm like, oh, these two are funny together. It was a real joy.
Yeah.
For me, the show has been very educational because I didn't know anything about gaming culture. I grew up in the 90s. I was playing video games basically, but I didn't know anything behind how's the culture. But you have created something so beautiful that's funny, it's heartwarming, and that's drama, and you care for the characters because they're driven about something. And I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you.
That's very sweet. Yeah, Ashly's taught me everything I know about video games. So we're doing good.
I interviewed her for season 3, and she made me curious about more video games. So Ashly,
that's cool.
Go on, give him a rec. What's a good video game for him to play right now?
Try UFO 50.
There you go. UFO
No,
50.
no.
It's actually 50 games in one, so I gave you 50 recommendations.
One of them you've got to
Yeah,
like.
I'm getting into it because my daughter is 6 years old and now she's addicted to Minecraft.
Oh, great.
I have to say, Jessie, I love your character because the humor.
Thank you.
This dark humor that your character has, it's very special and particular, but it's also, you don't offend people, but it's very authentic for the character. How do you create this besides of the writers room? Do you add? Do you recommend? Do you create something extra?
I do what's written and then I riff on it. So the writing is really what we jump off of. And I like that you say I don't offend people, but you're wrong. I have offended my mother. My mom is like, how could you have said that? And I'm like, again, it's a character, Mom. I'm very politically different from Joe. But she really dislikes the jokes about unions. She thinks it's a really bad thing to be saying publicly. And I get a kick out of that because it's obviously a comedy and I don't believe anything that Joe agrees with.
Joe is a conservative icon. She is a young conservative icon.
Unfortunately for my mother, who works in politics.
I've been saying that the show is very educational for me because I didn't know many things about how it's the creation of these video games that we have, about even being influential in the culture of video games. There is a billionaire industry. And the show has been fluctuating, showing us how a game can have success and how a game can be a disaster. And I want to know, what do you have learned, both of you, about this gamer culture since you started working the show?
I think I've learned a lot of what you've learned in terms of just how massive it is and how there is just such a big community around it. And I will say some of that was just learning from, Ashly Burch, who's on the show, who's also, a video game queen, and just learning sort of what that world entails and what, how people are diehard over their games. Because I'm married to a man who plays games, but I don't pay attention. I don't pay attention to what he's doing.
But for me, I grew up in the 90s, and I don't understand so that much now this new gamer situation, because for me I had to have good grades to play video games. And you only see an adult playing video games at that time. But now there's a whole community of adult people playing video games and being obsessed and using this as an escape for many reasons. And this whole culture has been created over the past 15 years. But this show has been influential for them because they have a voice. We've been seeing it. And for you, how do you feel being part of this? How do you being part of something different? Because there's not too many shows about this.
I'm really proud to be on the show. I mean, I love how much we highlight the artistry behind the video game industry and what a mode of storytelling video games are, and how these games have different iterations coming out every few years. It's all stuff I didn't really know anything about before I got cast on the show, so I've learned a lot about the industry by working on this show.
You mentioned something interesting. This is the art behind video games. And I didn't learn about that until I was watching the show. And for you, Naomi, how do you can define this new art probably behind creating video games, behind creating narratives?
Well, it's like creating a movie. Every video game is a blockbuster movie, basically. The time they're spending, the money they're spending to make those, a single game. And also, I didn't know that, the really in-depth games, like, the Mythic Quest, as the game is based on, you play those games for weeks, months, like just to get to the end. And I had no idea that the games, you played that long. Do you know what I mean? Honey, at best I'm doing Candy Crush. So I don't really know what's happening. So I didn't realize you would play a game for weeks and weeks until you got to the end.
What did you think Andy was doing all that time?
You know what? I said, I love him. I'm going to let him do what he wants to do.
And behind the business part, because there's also a huge business, a billionaire industry behind it. Have you learned anything new about, because this is 4 seasons, you've been involved in 5 years almost, or 3 years, because I don't know when you guys started, but you have to learn something about the behind the business thing. And what do you have learned, Jessie and Naomi, about the business, about behind the video games?
Well, I've learned that there's a studio in Montreal. No, I've learned a lot. I mean, not so much that's coming to mind right in this moment as I'm being quizzed about it. But we have consultants from Ubisoft who come and sit on set with us, and they teach us a lot about specifically Ubisoft and those games, and that has been really interesting to see how they're bridging the gap between TV and film and video games, and I've really enjoyed working with them.
Yeah, and definitely I think we've learned the extent to which video games really have been, again, I said it's like a movie. It's like the video games are now elevated to that same level. It's just like TV, film, video games, and being treated with that same level of care, professionalism, and intensity, which is very exciting to see and to be a part of. Exactly. You know, not a lot of shows talking about that world. And so to be at the forefront of that feels really exciting.
Jessie, Naomi, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Thank you so much, Ruben.